We have the power to do anything we like. Absolute power over every particle in the universe. Everything that has ever existed or ever will exist, as from this moment. Are you listening to me, Romana? Because if you're not listening to me, I can make you listen. Because I can do anything. As from this moment, there's no such thing as free will in the entire universe. There's only my will because I possess the key to time. Doctor, are you alright? Well, of course I'm alright. But suppose I wasn't alright. Well, this thing makes me feel in such a way, I would be very worried if I felt like that about someone else, feeling that or this about that. Do you understand? Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Armageddon Factor, written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin, and directed by Michael Hayes. This is the conclusion to the massive Key to Time story arc, in which the Doctor, Romana and K9 search for the key to time in order to stop the Black Guardian from creating chaos and havoc throughout the universe. And as we're talking about the final story in this story arc, let's go back a bit and let's talk about whether this plan worked. Throughout the season, each story starts off with the Doctor and Romana go looking for a part of the key to time, and sometimes the story is focused on it, and the Doctor gets, and the ending is them finding the key. And then in other stories, like the Androids of Tara, they find the key, and the story is about what's happening in the situation. Now, I am known by a lot of people that I hang around with that I'm not particularly a fan of these kind of story arcs, because I find that a lot of the time they distract from the story that they're telling from the moment. A great example would be in a 11th Doctor story where you're telling the story you're telling now, and all of a sudden there's like a crack in time, or somebody says Doctor Who, and the story focuses on that, and it kind of forgets the kind of story it's telling, just so it can build up to a finale. But I don't feel that this story arc does that, because every story automatically starts with the Doctor and Romana trying to find the key. So I think for the majority of it, the story arc, in terms of it being a story arc, is very well handled, because it actually helps tell the story that it wants to tell. It's not always perfect, however. In the first story, the Repos operation, and in the Stones of Blood, they keep mentioning that, when I say keep mentioning, there's scenes where they mention that the Doctor will have a rival expedition led by the Black Guardian to try and take the keys away from the Doctor and Romana. However, none of that actually plays out until the very end, in the Armageddon Factor. So, when it comes to that, I do think it is a bit of a problem. Now, the big question is, does these individual stories help build up this story? I'm not so convinced. True, it's great for the stories that they're telling for the moment, because we get, because the stories are still really self-contained, and you can watch any of them without any other knowledge of the key to time, because it starts off with the Doctor and Romana basically stating that that's what they're going for, that's what they're looking for, that's the goal of the story, and that works very well. But for how important this key is supposed to be, the majority of the stories just treat the key as just something they should pick up. A great example of this is actually in the Androids of Tara, in which the Doctor doesn't seem interested in finding the key and lets Romana go looking for it. And when they do find it, it doesn't really have any properties. It just seems to be an item, a useless item, until it's all put together.
which is okay, but it doesn't help illustrate the power of the key to time. But some stories actually do. The Power of Kroll, despite it being an unpopular story, does show the key to time in its effect, creating the giant beast Kroll. So it does at some points, but I don't feel like we needed the key to time story arcs. I feel like we could have had those stories. I don't think they hurt those particular stories, so I'm happy with what we got in terms of it being part of the story arc. But I don't think they necessarily helped each other in either way. Like if any of these stories weren't part of this story arc, if all the key to time elements was just in this story, they were just finding that the one piece, just the key to time all in this one story, I don't think you would find that much a difference, if that makes any sense. But yeah, apart from the Power of Kroll, everybody takes rubbish with the Power of Kroll, but it actually stands as a standalone story and a great segment to the key to time story arc. So there's another little bit of praise for the Power of Kroll. That's surprising. But anyway, let's get to the Armageddon Factor. This is a 6-part long, and the Doctor and Romana go looking for the final segment to the key to time. And what they do is they land on the planet they believe the key is on. However, when they land there, it seems to be gone. There's nothing there, and they can see the twin planet to which they know that these two planets have been on a nuclear war. In fact, on the other planet, they sense the TARDIS and they send a nuclear warhead to destroy the TARDIS. And so the Doctor dematerializes just before it explodes, so tricking the enemy into believing that they were destroyed and putting them into the capital of this planet. And here we get some really great scenery of a war-torn country. There are bits where you see like a hospital where you can see just lots of people just very unwell and they're lying on the floor because there's no room. And we get this big station which is led by the head of the organization, the marshal of this planet. I can't remember if he was ever named. He's just the marshal. And the princess. Now, the princess is a very important character here, and it's very important to note that she is played by British actress Lalla Ward. She will become very important to Doctor Who extremely soon. For those of you who know who Lalla Ward is, you already know. But we're talking about the Armageddon Factor, and here she plays the Princess Astra. And I really like the human characters in this story. The Marshal, you can kind of see that he's desperate, and he's got a very hard military mind. He believes that you can't ask for peace, you've got to win it. And the story does a good job at not only making him the villain, of course, but is seeing it from his point of view. He's very determined, and his passion for this war is getting out of hand. And I really do like the actor John Woodvin. Just a fantastic performance, and some of the banter between him and the Fourth Doctor. I especially like when the Doctor goes back to this area, and then the Marshal is all of a sudden treating him like he was destined to save everyone, and the Doctor is like, I want a psychological barrier that will stop anybody from fighting, and the Marshal's like, you stop pulling my leg. So yeah, some very great performances. And Princess Astra, she obviously works for the Marshal, but and she is used as morale to keep the soldiers fighting, basically. But she doesn't really believe in this war. She wants to make a peace with the enemy, the Zelans, I believe they're called. Zeons. And it's also here we get to discover that she has a relationship with one of the medical people, one of the doctors, and not the doctor, but one of the doctors of her planet. And the story starts off with the doctor trying to going around in this city, and they discover a door. Now, before this, the Marshal actually imprisoned Princess Astra in this small room filled with radiation, and has killed her guard, who has locked her in there. And the doctor finds her. However, he gets taken to the Marshal. And let's talk about Tom Baker. Here he's back, thankfully, after his one-off in terms of his performance with The Power of Cull. He is back at his brilliant, bombastic self, especially with the last scene of the story, which I will get on to. But man, Tom Baker is phenomenal here. I really like his relationship with Princess Astra and Romana here, and the Marshal. He just gets along very well in terms of his performance with the entire cast. Romana here, I actually kind of started to like her now. She's Mary Tams is just a fantastic actress, and her portrayal in this story, she's a little bit more independent. She does get captured at the very end, but it's not to the extreme that it was prior. It's literally just a small plot point in this story, so it's a little bit better now. I wouldn't say she's a great companion yet, which is a shame, because this will be Mary Tam's last story in terms of television. She left the role because she felt like the stories weren't doing her justice, and not only do I understand that, but I also strongly agree that none of these stories really let her be the companion that she should have been. But luckily she did one season of audio dramas with the Fourth Doctor before, sadly, she passed away. We will be talking about one of those stories, because I have one of those stories. So this is not the last for Mary Tim for us. So anyway, let's also talk about, as we're here, Michael Hayes is directing. Man, does this story look very good. If all of the shots are on studio, and because of the situation of the story, we get a very dark, claustrophobic feeling, and Michael Hayes does a fantastic job at shooting it. I love when they're in the corridors, and you do generally feel like you're in a cramped situation, but it still looks good. The word I would use is like gritty, or realism, or immersive. Though there are scenes where they're in like the Marshals, like what's the room? The Marshals room. I'm just gonna call it. And though it's not as cramped as the other sets, it still looks really good. Michael Hayes does a fantastic job at emphasizing the scale of it, and the set design is just phenomenal. I especially like how the screen that all the characters are looking at is actually like above head, so all the characters are looking up, and we do actually get an over-the-shoulder shot when they believe that the princess has been captured by the Zelons. I've probably changed the name of that, I do apologise. And so we get a shot of the officer's shoulder, and it makes the room feel a lot bigger than it probably is, if we're going to be honest. And so the Doctor slowly discovers that the Marshal has this routine where when he's stressed, he looks into a mirror and he talks to it. Later on, Romana teams up with the princess's boyfriend, the medical doctor, and they go behind the mirror and they see that he's talking. It's a one-way mirror, and he's talking to a skull. That's really not creepy at all. It's just some great atmosphere. And later on in the story, they find a teleportation where they believe the princess has gone, and so they go into the teleport and they go to the other planet, which has been blocked from the sensors of the first planet by a mysterious third planet. Or at least they describe it as a third planet, but when we see it at the end, it's just a normal spaceship. I say normal for it looks like a spaceship. You could look at it, you don't think planet, you think spaceship. But that's not important. So they go to this to the other planet, and they find out that there is a computer. Everything is run by a computer in terms of the enemy warfare. Everything is automatic and it's programmed to win the war. But there's also a mysterious figure, the Shadow. The Shadow might not be the strongly written villain. Mostly he just seems there to look menacing and really just to be the folly to the Doctor. But that voice is the coolest. Oh man, I can't describe how just cool it is. It's got like that weird effect where it kind of sounds like there's like a second voice underneath the first one. And just something about the Shadow and the way he's designed. It's a very simple effect, but I think it does really work. But like I said, in terms of writing, he's probably not the strongest villain. Maybe the Marshal should have been the main villain. But the Shadow is pretty cool. He's one of those. I kind of forgive him for being not so strongly written, because the design and the actor just do such a fantastic job at representing just pure evil. And we later find out that he's working for the Black Guardian, and his plan was, instead of searching for all the keys at once like the Doctor and Romana did, he actually skipped right to the end to try and find the sixth segment, and waited until the Doctor and Romana got all of them so he could actually steal the Doctor's, basically taking the thunder from the Doctor, which is actually a pretty cool plan, pretty good plan for a villain. However, like I said, it means that in terms of the other stories, there wasn't really a folly for them story in terms of the Black Guardian's representation. With the rest of the stories just having beware the Black Guardian, beware the Black Guardian. And only really the last story do they have to be concerned with the Black Guardian. So the Doctor makes a plan of making a false sixth segment so that he can have small control over time, of all of time and space for the moment. And he traps everyone in a time bubble. He traps most people in a time bubble because the Marshal, after none of the enemies were firing, the Marshal actually took a ship so he can shoot a nuclear warhead, destroying the planet once and for all. But as the Doctor realizes, the machine to which the K9 actually befriends, the machine gets programmed that when it wins the war, which it believes it has, it will self-destruct, destroying both the planet and the other planet as well, basically destroying everyone. But the Doctor makes a false sixth segment and creates in a time loop, which means that for 2 or 3 episodes, we constantly get a repeat of the Marshal. It's just like, fire, and a hand going to the button, fire, the hand comes on the button like that. It's basically when time becomes a loop. Nice little reference to Star Trek there for any nerds out there. And here the story does kind of weaken a bit. Astria gets controlled by the Shadow to do his bidding, and she tricks the Doctor into letting her into the TARDIS for a bit. And so the Doctor, Romana, and Astra, they discover the third planet, and they transport to the third planet, to which anarchy ensues. It's here that we get introduced to probably, in my opinion, the weirdest Doctor Who character of all time. Let me introduce you to Strax. Drax is a Time Lord who went to the Doctor's Time Lord Academy. He was in his tech class back at the Academy. He knows the Doctor as Thicta Segma. Here, it's never actually stated that it's a nickname. So, from the audience's perspective, this mystery that the Doctor's name, because they made a whole deal in it, like Doctor Who, the show is called Doctor Who. This random character just comes out of a hole, looks at the Doctor, and just says his name. This will later be explained in the Happiness Patrol as a nickname for him back in the Academy. It's not actually his real name. The Happiness Patrol, another heavily criticised story, helps with this story. That's so weird, isn't it? 2 stories known for being some of Doctor Who's weakest actually helps to improve one of Doctor Who's most probably ambitious stories for the 1970s. Like the big story arc was never done before, so there you go. Then the Drax is a Time Lord, and he's got this strange Cockney accent, and he's got all of these colourful, just these colourful words, and he's basically a mechanic that goes around, like a self-employed mechanic going around whenever he can, for good or for evil. He's just not really that interested, and he helps the Doctor design a shrinking gun. And one of the cliffhangers, the Doctor is actually captured by one of the Shadow's henchmen, which I believe they call the Mutes, because they don't talk, but we don't think that's their official name. I don't know if they've been officially called anything. And when Drax is behind the Mute, ready to shoot, the Doctor tries to slowly walks away, only for Drax to shoot the Doctor, shrinking him to a size of an inch. What a weird character! And when he comes in, he basically becomes one of the main characters, and he appears in part 5 or part 6. I can't remember. No, it must be in part 5 because there's a cliffhanger. And it's just it's weird because from this point in the story was taking itself very seriously. It had this great discussions about war, about ego, and the misery it can cause, and the quest for peace and love, And then all of a sudden you get this really weird, strange Time Lord character who just appears out of nowhere, takes over basically the show, and gets a lot of scenes with. He basically becomes the companion because he teams up with the Fourth Doctor. I don't really know how to feel about him. Later on, in an audio drama, in a Doctor and Second Romana audio drama, he actually gets his own dedicated story towards him. I believe it's called The Trouble of Drax, but I could be wrong. And in it, not only is he in it, and I think he's the main villain, I'm not quite sure, but he has multiple incarnations in that story, and one of them is played by Trigger from Only Fools and Horses. What? What? Sorry. I know we're not talking about that story, we're talking about the Armageddon Factor, but I just can't stress enough. He is, in my opinion, the strangest, weirdest character. Does he work in the Armageddon Factor? I honestly, after watching the story, I honestly don't know. On one hand, he basically takes over the story, and the story, which was taking itself really serious so far, all of a sudden becomes just a gigantic comedy because of the way this character talks and acts and interacts with other characters. But on the other hand, he's just so watchable. Maybe I think a few people might find him irritating, especially how the rest of the story was such a great build-up. And I think this is where you either love it or you hate it. I personally, I don't know how to feel about him. I can understand, I'm like on the fence at the moment. I don't know whether I like it or hate it. But anyway, whilst Romana is with Princess Astra, she mentions that her destiny has arrived. She's ready to metamorphosis. And Romana clicks. She's like, I understand you. And it's here that it's revealed because when Drax shrunk the Doctor, he left he left the TARDIS door open. The Shadow could have actually got in and took the rest of the key to time. Before that, they destroyed the computer, so everything's fine on that regard. But the Shadow now has the key to time. And just before he puts it in, the princess actually walks up to the key and transforms into the sixth segment. The sixth segment it's hard to describe. I always thought it was her, like the key transformed into her, but there's a scene in which her boyfriend looks up her family tree, and they discover that there's an anomaly in all of her family's bloodline that seems to get passed down and thing. So it's kind of described like her entire family was like in her DNA. The key to time was there, and before the Shadow could put the key in, the Doctor regrows and takes everything and lets and it breaks the time loop. So the Marshal's nuclear warhead was set off. However, the Doctor set a force field and it bounced off the planet and hit the Shadow planet, the Shadow's spaceship, destroying it. And so the story ends. Actually, the last scene is not written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin. It's actually written by Graham Williams and Douglas Adams. Fun fact, in which the Doctor puts all the key to time together, and the scene which I recreated at the start of this video takes place, in which the Doctor pretends to be mad, and you can see it's Douglas Adams writing. You can just tell. And the Black Guardian disguises himself as the White Guardian to trick the Doctor into taking the key. And there's a great bombastic moment in which the Doctor's like, "Key to time, I command," and then he interrupts himself so he can talk to the White Guardian. And when he explains the sixth segment was a person, and that with it all connected, she will be trapped. Princess Astra will be trapped in that form forever. To which the White Guardian's like, "This is regrettable, but it can't be helped. So let's get this over with." And the Doctor clicks then that this is the Black Guardian. To which he asks the key to time to stay where it is, and puts the force field up and destroys the key to time, resurrecting Princess Astra and sends her back to the planet so she can be with her boyfriend. And the story ends with the Doctor adding a randomizer to the TARDIS, a device which controls the TARDIS location, but doesn't tell the Doctor or Romana, so nobody knows where they're going to land up next. So it builds up. Basically, it's saying that the Black Guardian, they're going to have to challenge the Black Guardian again, which will happen in the Doctor's fifth incarnation. And there you go, the Armageddon Factor. It's a bit long, but I personally found it really enjoyable. The first few episodes remind me a lot of Genesis of the Daleks, where it has some great discussion on war and just hope or lack of hope, and just the misery of everything. But the story takes a random, strange turn later down on the story, with Drax. The Shadow isn't that particularly strong in terms of writing, but I did find him very enjoyable to watch. If you're looking for a satisfying conclusion to the Key to Time story arc, you're gonna be disappointed. It doesn't feel like it should be the finale. It feels like it could be just another segment to the Key to Time story arc. This was Anthony Head's last story as script editor. He would be replaced in the next television story by Douglas Adams. So we're going to start a whole new era when we get back to the TV stuff. I personally thought Anthony Head was okay. A lot of his stories under his run were a bit too silly, maybe for their own good, and some of them weren't as strong as they should have been. But it is a great era of Doctor Who, and I highly recommend you try these stories out, including the Key to Time. You might not like a few of them, but I do highly recommend you check them all out. I've even stated at some point that these would actually be a great starting on point to new series, because to people who watch the new series, because they're used to these story arcs kind of storytelling. So there you go. That's the Armageddon Factor. So join me next time where we have an audio adventure and the Doctor reunites with some great old friends back in Victorian London. So join me next time for The Justice of Jalkar. See you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!